Good afternoon. My name is Peter Winkler. I am from VacayHome Connect, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, which is titled Catch the Spring Fever, Tips and Tricks on How to Get More Bookings This Spring. Just a few housekeeping items this morning or this afternoon. We are muting everybody's mic, so you don't have to do it yourself, so that in this case, everybody can enjoy the webinar and we don't have too much background noise and can enjoy it. We do have some time at the end for question and answers, and we encourage you to have questions ready for us that we can answer. And we kindly ask you to use the chat functionality of this software and send us your questions via chat so that we can answer them after the presentation is over. So at this time, I would also like to welcome my co-host. Her name is Melanie Bourgeois. She's from Booking.com, and she is the VacayHome Partner Manager. And she'll be guiding with me through today's webinar, and will give you some insightful information on what you can do. To give you a
Hi, everyone. Thanks.
To give you a little background about why we started doing this webinar is Melanie and I, we have a lot of strategy sessions on how we can help our clients. And one thing that Melanie mentioned to us over and over again is that the second quarter is one of the hottest booking quarters for Booking.com. They receive the most amount of bookings in this quarter for the rest of the year. And so we strategized and said, hey, what can we do for our clients and help them to really take advantage of this second quarter on the demand that is happening in the market, on the various markets around the world. So they can take advantage of that demand and capture a few more bookings for yourself and for your properties. And so we came up with a nice strategy, a nice presentation that gives a little bit of strategy, but also tactical advice, so that after this presentation, you can immediately sit down, go to your property management system and make these changes, or contact your account manager here at VacayHome Connect and work with them to improve these bookings. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Melanie, and she will get you started.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, everyone. Great to be on today. Looking forward to really discussing some of the big things that you can be doing to really gain a lot of revenue and traction in Booking.com this quarter. As Peter said, this is historically our highest quarter of the year for bookings, and Q3 traditionally is one of our highest quarters in revenue. So this is really the time to really get ahead of finishing spring, but really looking to summer and even late summer, and how can you be making sure that you're getting guaranteed revenue for later in the year. So we're going to go into different topics today. The first one is we're going to just be going into just some high-level information of, it's kind of the basics of revenue management, but what are some of the things that we recommend that you be looking at? And one, of course, is quality availability, which is something that is not, something that is new to our industry, but when you're looking at your quality availability, there's different things to be looking at. And so first one is looking at your long-term availability and making sure that you're available all throughout the rest of the year, but also for those high demand dates. If you're a PM that is looking at kind of holding their high demand dates and seeing if you can get a higher ADR, you can actually do that right now by opening up that availability, because we at Booking.com have the largest global audience. And so especially we have great, domestic bookers, but international is where we are, is kind of our bread and butter. And what we find historically is that international guests spend 18% more. So there's where you can get your higher ADR. They stay 40% longer, and they book 2 times earlier, meaning that if you are opening up that availability for late summer, even fall, that might be in those demand markets, you're going to be able to get that booking right now, whereas with other OTAs, maybe you would have that in a shorter window. So having that open up all year round is great, because we have guests that are booking a year to even a year and a half in advance.
And so we have a lot of customers, a lot of clients that always ask me, it's like, hey, Peter, how do I really target international travelers? How can I have them come to my properties? So I like to use an example that we had with one of our property managers that had a lot of availability during the shoulder season down in Florida. And he told me, he said, Peter, I really want to fill my gaps, but I don't want to discount to my bread and butter. My core business is my four states around me. And, I don't want to discount 20% in my core business, but somehow I still like to fill those gaps. So we sat down and looked at that and said, okay, what we can do in this case, we can run an international promotion that's targeted. So in that case, we run a promotion for international travelers that was only seen by certain countries. And what we were able to do, we were able to protect his rate for those core business that he has, and we're able to charge full time. But at the same time, we were able to fill those gaps with international travelers by having this promotion and having it out there. And so he was able to protect his rate and we're able to give that to his core business, but at the same time fill those gaps. Now, when you run those international promotions, we highly recommend to study or consider international travel patterns so that it can really hone in when are those travelers are really traveling, or when are they looking. European holidays is a great example. Um, I am myself, I grew up in Germany and I know that the Germans are the masters in vacationing. So if you take a look at when their travel patterns are, and then you can start tracking on this business. As an example, Easter holiday or Pentecost. A lot of our property managers in the United States, they always have troubles filling the rooms right up until Memorial Day. Usually when Memorial Day comes, they get busy with the summer season. So up to Memorial Day is kind of a shoulder season. So in that case, we looked into the exact travel patterns. When is Germany going on Easter break? When is Germany going on Pentecost, which they get 2 weeks off over there? And so we had promotions exactly targeting those weeks when those travelers are on break, and we were able to fill some of those empty houses. Same applies for Asia. If you are, especially in the Hawaiian market, Asian Golden Week might be something to target for you, definitely. Or if you take a look at our friends up in the north of Canada, target Canada Day as an example, and see when are those people traveling, because they are different than our travel patterns.
Absolutely. Great, really great example on that, Peter. Um, so knowing that as well, it's also a matter of sometimes we're not quite sure where the demand is coming from or what are going to be our short and long-term demand dates. So this is something that you can be utilizing with your VacayHome account managers. We have the data to be able to provide to them to show them when are your short and long-term demand dates, as well as we're able to identify dates that are unbookable due to restrictions. And I think honestly, that's one of the biggest things. I think as an industry, you kind of know your markets and you know when the demand is occurring. But what are even some of the dates that are unbookable due to your restrictions? So you can see here, for example, this is a property that while it's extreme, they have a 29 night minimum length of stay requirement, and they're only available for 4 nights. So obviously that's a large gap, but for some of yours, for example, maybe you have a 3 night minimum, but you have a lot of pockets with 2 nights that are only available. That's a lot of occupancy that we could be filling by being able to open up those restrictions, and we have a way to be able to identify that at a little bit more of a scale. So I think really as a best practice is utilizing and making sure that you are available for short and long-term demand, making sure if you do have any cancellations that do occur during season, make sure you get that right back into your inventory so that we can resell those rooms. But this is a great way to identify when you should have your availability open. Another practice when we're just talking about availability and talking about the quality is really understanding. We talk a lot about your length of stay and your restrictions. And the market can dictate certain length of stays, which we understand. But I think there's times that we say, well, we really want a length of stay. But what I want to show you visually from the front end of booking.com is to kind of give you a visualization to say, even if you're requiring a higher length of stay, what ends up being the disadvantage here is that you are going to be having a harder time being found. So there are three different screenshots here, and from left to right, they go from in high demand. Panama City Beach is one of our big demand markets for Q2. And if you were looking ahead to July, if you go from left to right, it is a 7-night stay, and then it goes down to a 2-night stay. And so for you, for example, if you have properties in Panama City, if you require a longer length of stay, you could be competing, for example, against hundreds, if not thousands, of other properties in that location. But as you start to remove your restrictions and have it less and less restrictive, you are competing against a much smaller subset. So not only are we talking about the importance of availability from a sense of making sure that it is aligned with what the market is driving so that you can get as much traction, but it's more or less the big conversation of can you be found within your competitors and on our site. And really that's one of the biggest challenges is with all the inventory that is out there in in the accommodation segment, are you being found in every single search as much as possible?
Thank you, Melanie. One of the things that really auditing your restriction is something that's extremely important. We had a client that actually asked us to help to fill their gaps with promotions, and they had pretty significant availability for a month. But when we started looking into that availability, we realized that this homes weren't able to be booked because the restrictions were so in place in their property management system that the stay patterns couldn't even be achieved. So we worked with the property manager and said, hey, you need to remove some of those into your property management system so that we can publish this out to the market. So that's a great thing. But talk about stay patterns. So here's an example of that we did with one of our property managers. That property manager had a 5-night minimum length of stay, and we weren't really getting enough of the traction for that consumer for other stay patterns. So we looked at what he has available, and we started to switch it around. And we changed it up so that anytime up to 100 days, we actually increased the length of stay from 5 nights to 7 nights. Because if somebody's booking that far out, we can be more restrictive. We want to make sure that we can get this whole week filled by one guest, because that's what we like, right? One guest filling the whole week, perfect. But as we get into the 180-day pattern, 180-day to 90 days, that's what really when their bread and butter bookings started coming in. That's when their base, like the core bookings, really started filling in and started booking up their big houses and their big stay patterns. But then as you hit the 90 days, within 3 months of arrival, that's when you can start thinking, okay, now we need to start loosening up this whole thing a little bit. And we set the restrictions down to 3 nights. So we can start filling in some of those gaps that are available. And as we get closer, within 30 to 60 to 30 days, we actually changed it down to 2 nights. And it was so successful because we were able to really compete with other properties or even with hotels. Like we were able to steal business from hotels into vacation rentals through this strategy. And then less than 30 days, I know it's not very popular in vacation rental world, but 1-night stays are possible. Many homeowners say, I prefer to get some revenue rather than having the home empty. So instead of having the home empty, give me a couple of 1-night stays. In most cases, your expenses are actually covered by the fees, so your housekeeping fees are all set, so you don't have really that much more in expenses, but you're actually providing more services to your homeowner and more revenue to your homeowner. So what we call the waterfall strategy is as closer as you get to the arrival date, start reducing your length of stay pattern. And obviously it depends on your individual market and in your individual homes and see what the ideal length of stay pattern is. But we'll be happy to work with you and test a few out and see if it actually changes. Are we able to capture additional more revenue from an adjusted stay pattern? And the beauty about it is you can adjust these stay patterns directly in your property management system. And through our interfaces, it comes directly through to our system, and we are pushing it out to Booking.com instantly.
Perfect. Thanks, Peter. So now let's go into pricing, another area that is a big topic when it comes to performance. So what are just some best practices and just things to be aware of? I think the first thing that we obviously want to talk about is just making sure that you have not only competitive pricing, but having consistent pricing. If you are being distributed to multiple different platforms, there is a big challenge that we're finding that there is inconsistency among all the different distribution channels. And so why do we stress the importance of this, not only for Booking.com, but I think as an industry, is that on average, consumers visit up to 7 different travel sites before booking a trip. I know that I am one of those people as well. I want to make sure that I can get the best price. I may fall in love with the property, so I'm going to try to go to any website I can to find the best deal possible. And that's a lot of moving around. That's a lot of not being able to get guaranteed bookings. We're getting a lot of page views, but maybe we're not getting that confirmed sale. 86% find it important to compare prices from different sellers. So when we talk about 7 different platforms, but then almost 8 out of 10 bookings are coming because of different comparing prices from sellers, that's a lot. 84% find it important to buy from brands they're familiar with as well. So to me, when I look at it from a perspective from property managers, is that if we can guarantee competitive pricing that is consistent along all channels, they may fall in love with your brand and then book with you directly in the future. 59% of vacation rental bookings in the USA were made from OTAs in 2018. In the next 5 years, room sales are expected to grow by 50%, and this is all driven by online platforms. So we know that obviously the online vacation segment is growing extremely fast. But one thing that I think is actually really interesting is that 35% of all direct bookings come from OTAs. So kind of going back to what I had mentioned is that even though you are distributed amongst all of these different channels, if a property manager does a great job of owning that reservation, even though it is on an OTA, you will probably be able to still see those satisfied guests in the future and booking directly. So that's why it is so important to have consistent pricing to make sure that you get brand awareness, that you get brand loyalty, because they know as a consumer that they are going to get consistently the best price no matter what channel they're on with your product. And also, why is it so important to have diverse online channels? So not only just, again, from Booking.com, but 52% book through an OTA as a consumer, and this is from a millennial segment, and 64% of all bookings come from an OTA. So mobile in general, we're going to be going further into talking a little bit about mobile later in the presentation, but obviously we know that millennials and the mobile segment is our fastest growing on Booking.com, and so capturing this group through these online platforms is the best way to be able to get guaranteed revenue.
Thanks, Melanie. So obviously, Melanie mentioned how important it is to have a diverse strategy of OTA channels. So we also want to point out that we are your one-stop shop here at VacayHome Connect. You can see, obviously Booking.com is our preferred partner, and with Booking.com, we also distribute to its partner site, Priceline.com. But we also offer connections to all of the other major player in the industry, whether Expedia, Orbitz, Hotels.com, Airbnb, TripAdvisor. In the future, it will be Google, currently HomeAway, and private channels, and so on. So if you are not represented in any of those channels yet, please speak to your account manager, and we can make it happen for you. So Melanie briefly talked about millennials in her thing. So I kind of want to touch upon few things that you can do directly to actually attract the millennial traveler. The millennial traveler is slightly different, and we've heard this over and over again. They know millennial travelers, they prefer a lot more self-service than actually having it done for them. They also prefer a lot more customization over generalization. They're usually always connected. You always see people with their phones constantly in their hands, using it and interacting with it. They're also extremely engaged in social media, so we actually can take advantage of that. And they're less tolerant when it comes to compromises in an experience, which is important when they come and stay at your properties. So here are a couple of things that you can do directly or instantly to start attracting these travelers. Provide strong visuals. That is hands down one of the most important things we can say. High-res photos and virtual tours are extremely important. You need to showcase your property. These millennials really look at the photos of your properties. And one of the reasons why high-res photos are so extremely important is because these millennial travelers use their phones to book these properties. And so what they do, you ask me, why is a high-res photo important on a phone? Well, what they do, they use those phones and in the picture on the phone and start zooming into those phones. They use the zoom functionality. And because of that, it's important that we have high-res photos loaded for your properties so that when they use the zoom in functionality on their phone on booking.com, they actually can see everything clear and it's not pixelated on their phones. Now, Instagrammable experience. That is something that's actually very interesting. Instagram is taking off. Almost every millennial is using it. So how can you take advantage of that? Well, this could be very easy. Like if you have something, create an experience that the millennial would like to share. Very simple example would be if you have somewhere on your properties or in your property area have an empty wall. Well, why not work with the local artist community and produce a mural against this empty wall, against the garage, anywhere? So this garage wall suddenly becomes your Instagrammable photo, and you can use that in your marketing materials, but also then later on for virtual marketing, so that they actually take pictures of that, take selfies of that, and then pass it on to their friends. Now, amenities obviously is an important one. So there are certain things that you can set up in your home so that attracts more millennial travelers. Netflix or Hulu are a very good example. So I don't think everybody, the talk of the town these days is what is the latest Netflix show? What's the next latest show on Hulu? And then when they travel to your homes, well, they don't want to miss out on that. So that's something where is to start offering these types of services in your homes that will help them to attract them. Gaming consoles are huge. If you ever try to get a teenager or even a teenager, older too, somebody in their 20s to get away from their PlayStation and give up for an hour, you will know how difficult and hard that is. But if you start offering that in your homes and suddenly the teenager tells to the parents, yeah, I really want to stay at this house because that has my PlayStation 3 and I don't need to take it. That suddenly you can capture that business. Smart home is a very interesting one. More and more with technology evolving, you can give your travelers or the actual the actual ability to customize their experience in their home, in your home on their phone. So whether that's setting up the lights via their smartphone or having the temperature set at the home via their smartphone, everything like that, you can connect it to the traveler's phone and then you can control it around your home. And smart speakers, with whether that is an Alexa or a Google Home or any of those things, have them in your home and have them available for your travelers and to use them because they use them at home and they're used to it to using it at home. Why not have it when they're staying at your properties? And then make it easy. Over and over again, we see that travelers start booking through booking.com at our clients, and then a day later, after the booking is confirmed, or the same day, the client is sending out the contract for the traveler to sign, and it's a 15-page contract. And literally, the moment they send out the 15-page contract for the traveler to sign, we see the cancellation coming through because people don't want to deal with a 15-page contract to read through just to stay at your properties. In that case, have the terms and conditions clearly stated on booking.com, and as they book, they agree to these terms and conditions, and this way you don't need to have a contract that's 15 pages. Similar is fees. A lot of travelers, a lot of our younger travelers actually complain to us that they see one rate displayed at our homes, but then later when they start booking it, the amount of fees that are being added on is it's very high, and they start canceling once they see those fees immediately after they booked. And Melanie will touch upon those fees a little later in the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of going back to a couple of other ways to have attractive rates on booking.com is, again, kind of why having these attractive rates. The first one is that I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but booking.com is under the Priceline group. And so with that, that means that we have over 17,000 strategic partners, whether that is Priceline or Agoda or even just different segments. We have so many different strategic partners that you are getting your property highlighted to. And so that is one way to get great transparency amongst all of the different channels. But what we also are seeing is that price differences can confuse guests and prevent them from securing bookings, which means that they're 30% less likely to book. That's something that we are doing a lot of work on just recently, especially as a company, because as Peter was mentioning, and we'll kind of talk about this more visually here in the next couple of slides, but cancellations or even additional fees is one of the things that we're seeing where we look at our guest journey where we're seeing the biggest drop off. So that is something I think, especially for the vacation rental world, is something that we have to be very strategic on. And what is the sweet spot in finding how we can, make that conversion. 65% check OTA websites first. So again, we were talking about that direct booking and getting that billboard effect from the OTA world. Attractive prices can drive more direct bookings to your site by, again, that brand awareness, that brand loyalty. So adjusting your rates frequently to outperform the competition. This is something that, especially right now, is a great way. You should really, when we're talking about summer is just around the corner, and I think it's great to be doing a long-term goal, is really establishing what are your revenue goals for this year, and how can we be getting ahead of it now so that later on in the year you can actually be more aggressive with your pricing because you have already exceeded some of your goals currently in our most important quarter. So I think it's having a strategy of a plan. So Peter mentioned a lot. What's great about booking.com is that we are and we attract all different audiences. So we have that international. We have a great domestic presence. We have guests that will book at many different rates. We have the millennials. So what is the group that you are wanting to maybe target based on your revenue goals? Is it length of stay? Is it going to be that you want that higher ADR? And there are so many different ways for you to strategize. And if you have that strategy plan, please talk to your VacayHome account management team because there are promotions or there are strategies where we can merchandise on the front end to make sure that we get those revenue goals for you. One thing, though, that we kind of did talk about briefly and I wanted to kind of go back to is the additional fees. And why we're seeing that drop off. So visually for you, I wanted to show you, this is a partner that we have on booking.com at the top, Seashore 62. And this property actually is one that when you're looking through the search, it's actually a very competitively priced property where it is an apartment and it's higher in the ranking than the comp set, which is even these big resorts and hotels there in that same location. And obviously, rightfully so, because if you look at the pricing, it's way, way smaller than any of these other comp sets in the area of anywhere between $144 to $219. But when you actually go from the search results and they click into the page, what you're going to see is that while it is the rate of $57, the fees itself actually for the specific property were 3 times the amount of their average daily rate for one night. So instead of it being $57 for the total price, with all the additional fees that come with it, it actually ended up being $206. And that is something that is difficult when it comes to converting, because when the fees are 3 times the amount, or when they have a much higher portion than even your average daily rate, and that's where guests will sometimes drop off. And even if they do convert, they could see that maybe they didn't see everything, and then they might cancel after the fact. So one thing that you really want to think about when it comes to your pricing, and even this strategy, if we're talking specifically around additional fees and putting a lot of the different additional markings that are done through the additional fees, is that you are going to receive more click views to your actual page. And then in general, what happens there is that if you get a direct click to your page, but you do not get a booking, that lowers your conversion rate. And ultimately, your conversion rate on Booking.com is one of the different metrics that we use to create our natural ranking. Booking.com actually is one of the OTAs that we believe in performance as far as ranking. There's not a way to be able to, manipulate your commission to get a higher placement, but there is a way. So this is all based on performance, and so conversion is one of the direct things that we see as a company to say, hey, these are properties that should be higher up because they convert at a higher pace. So without a good conversion rate, you're going to have a harder time being found because you're going to be lower in the ranking. And without having good ranking, it's harder to get additional bookings. So that's where pricing especially is just so important, and making sure that if you are being attractive to all of our consumers on the search, once they get to your page, you want to make sure that you get that guaranteed booking, because that is going to help you with your conversion rate, and ultimately it's a circle of better conversion rate, better placement, more bookings. And just to give you kind of a little bit more context even on, by making sure that you have the right pricing and have a good conversion rate and making sure that you're performing, you are going to be able to get into programs that are based on performance on Booking.com. So these two programs here are ones that we can always check to see if your properties are eligible for, but they are guaranteed ways to create more bookings and more revenue on our site. One is going to be Genius and the other is Preferred. Just to be transparent, both of these programs are ones that are qualified based on performance. So some of the criteria for both of these programs are surrounded by your overall review score, so were the guests satisfied with your property? Also your pricing score, so making sure that if we were to shop your property on all of these different platforms, would we have correct pricing, or at least the same type of pricing as some of our competitors? And then just overall performance. Are you performing well amongst your comp set in that specific destination? These are all things that actually create the eligibility for both programs. But to give you a little bit of context on these two programs, and this is one that you can talk with your account management team on, is the first is Genius. This is actually for our super users on Booking.com. So what it means for you is the property is a percentage, so it's like a discount. It starts at 10% off for your standard rate for one of your properties. But what will happen is you then have a optimal ranking to our most loyal guests. So when our Genius users log in, the Genius properties are going to be featured first. And what we find is that these guests cancel less, they book more, and they leave more reviews. You can also offer incentives like bike rentals or a welcome drink, or you can even use that discount to be applied specifically for business bookers or even specific countries. So if we're talking about that strategy of creating, a longer length of stay, maybe you could use the country element of our Genius for the discount so that you can get that higher length of stay. So this is a great program. It is a program that is growing extremely fast. And the other one is going to be Preferred. So this is for our top properties in that city search, and it is a 3% additional uptick in your commission, but it does guarantee that you are in the top searches in all of the searches that the guests are looking for. You do receive a merchandising of thumbs up from Booking.com, so you get that marketing on the front end to show that this, as Booking.com, we are endorsing that this is one of our best properties. And that 3% really does go right back into the property with the additional PPC and marketing initiatives that Booking.com does. Booking.com is actually one of Google's top accounts for our pay-per-click advertising and marketing. So you're getting that additional exposure from all of these different platforms. And really guaranteed more views increases your bookings. So this is a program that while if you're performing well, it just accelerates you to that next level. So now that we've talked a lot about availability and pricing, let's go into our final section, which is deals to consider in Q2. These are programs that you really can look at throughout the year, but are ones right now that we are seeing as some of the best promotions to be running in the second quarter. So we've talked a lot about mobile and about the millennial segment. And so now we actually have a new promotion that was just released at the beginning of the year, and it's our mobile rate. And so just visually to show you what it looks like on the front end, it is a discount, but you are going to get the merchandising on the front end to show that there is a mobile rate. And there is all this incentivizing. Some of our promotions on Booking.com, we don't always merchandise. Mobile is one that you will get a guaranteed merchandising on the front end. And why is it that we have the mobile rate? Well, just to give you some context on data, mobile bookings grew by 25% from 2017 to 2018 on Booking.com. So in 1 year, we grew 25%. And that was even before we had a mobile rate discount. So it's something that we're already seeing here in 2019 as that number is continually skyrocketing. Right now we have it's 6 out of 10 bookings from Booking.com are coming via mobile. So you are exposing yourself to, again, our fastest growing segment. What we're finding as well is that mobile rates on average give partners 26% more bookings from the mobile customers. So if you are kind of seeing where your bookings are coming from, if you're getting a lot that are coming from desktop, you may want to consider this because you're going to get additional mobile bookers from this promotion. And the other thing that we are seeing is that partners receive a 3% higher click-through rate from the search results. So while we were just talking about how can you be found in our search results and do people actually click on your property to go and book it, we're seeing that a natural 3% uptick is already happening by just offering this promotion. Now, one thing you can do as well with this promotion is it can be applied, it's a 10% discount, and it can be applied for those that are searching on our app or via mobile. But the other thing that you can apply it to as well, if you would choose to, is you can actually then have it applied as well to the desktop. So I know for myself as a consumer, there's many days where I will get on the app while I'm at work or when I'm out and about and search for my next dream vacation, but I won't book that until I get home and I spend time with my family. And so to make sure that you're still getting that locked in guest that was maybe searching via your property on our app or on the desktop previously, you can apply that 10% discount if it's in their search results. And you can have that 10% as well to make sure that you get that guaranteed booking from that discount. The final discount that we wanted to discuss today is getaway deals. I know that VacayHome has been doing some great promotion around this as well, but these are specific to the summer season where you can get that merchandising on the front end to say this is a specific promotion that Booking.com is doing, but they're called our getaway deals. And so Easter is just about wrapped up, but we did just launch our June, July, and August deals. What's great about these promotions is that you can actually, the guest can start booking this now, but the stay dates are specific to the months that you choose, whether that's the June getaway, July getaway, or the August getaway. It's a 15% off for the summer deals. What's great as well is that you have the ability to choose what cancellation policy you would like. In the past, we've sometimes had just a non-refundable, but obviously if you want to get more traction with this promotion, you can actually choose your standard policy or the non-refundable. And again, on the front end, what Booking.com is offering for this promotion is we have a landing page. As soon as you go to the front end, there's a specific landing page that will show you, please take advantage of who is in our getaway deals. So when we were talking specifically about ranking, how you can be found, this is an additional way because we have the landing page. It will then, if the guest clicks on that landing page, it takes them directly to all properties offering this promotion. So if you were on page 3 or 4 previously on Booking.com, you might be in page 1 of search results by offering this promotion. So it's a great way to be able to guarantee some revenue, get great merchandising, but more or less too, by having these, you're going to hopefully get more click-throughs, you're going to have more competitive pricing, and that will mean that your conversion rate will go up, which will help you in the long run of how you perform on Booking.com.
Excellent. Thank you, Melanie. Those are great promotions. So if you wonder how you can hear about these promotions into the future, I highly recommend that you watch out for the monthly newsletter that we're sending out. We just recently started that, and you will receive a monthly newsletter from us about all of the possible programs and promotions that all of our partner channels have available. And we are sending that to you, so watch out. It's coming out once a month. And all you have to do is reply and tell us which properties you'd like to enroll in which promotion, and we will handle it from there and take care of everything for you. So I think that's it for today's presentation. I would like to open this up to see if there are any questions on this presentation, on this subject. I have not seen anything in our chat window, so if you have questions, please feel free to send them through and we can answer them. I think we have a question-free audience, which is actually very good or very bad. We'll see.
One thing to note as well, everybody, if you would like to as well after, you can always compile your questions and send them to VacayHome, and they can forward that along to myself and our Booking.com team. So if there's a question later on that maybe you thought of once the presentation was over, feel free to send that over and we can answer that for you.
Absolutely. Our account management team is on standby to help you. That said, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today's webinar. This webinar has been recorded. We will send a link out to everybody who has been in attendance and also to the rest of the clients, so you can revisit this webinar. We also have a series of multiple webinars coming up, so stay tuned for part 2 and part 3 of the series, which is happening in May and June. And I wish you a wonderful afternoon and have a beautiful day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.